What if we told you that all the dog troubles are because of a few specific myths that no longer hold true? In this video, we'll cover 7 pieces of the so-called common knowledge that will totally change the way you look at your dog, maybe even literally. In 1970, a researcher named David Meach published his book, The Wolf, about, you guessed it, wolves. Specifically, a theory about the behavior and social dynamics that soon captured the imagination of the whole world. The concept of the alpha, and this theory really took off in the dog training community. Dog trainers began recommending various ways for owners to gain dominance over their pups, sometimes advising courses of action that bordered on animal abuse. Meanwhile, David Meach had continued to study wolves and had discovered something very surprising. The wolves he had studied before writing The Wolf had been living in captivity and had formed a pack together with a dominant alpha and a clear social hierarchy. But the wild wolves he was studying now had a completely different dynamic. They lived in family groups, and instead of the strongest wolf becoming the most dominant, the parents of the pack were the ones in charge. To this day, Meach is still actively trying to debunk his own work, but the myth of the alpha wolf, and therefore the alpha dog, has survived. On to 6 more myths that make us bark up the wrong tree when it comes to our dogs. When most people go to pet their dog, they instinctively reach for the head. This is natural. Most humans are a lot taller than most dogs, and the head tends to be the highest part of the animal, and thus the easiest to reach. Plus, dogs will often put their heads near our hands in order to sniff them, making it the easiest place to reach. A lot of people assume that dogs must prefer being pet on their heads to any other part of the body, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, many dogs actively dislike being pet on the top of their head, as it involves having a human loom over them intimidatingly and put their hand uncomfortably close to the dog's face. Most dogs, especially ones that don't know you, would much prefer that you pet them on their neck, shoulders, or back. We've all been there. You come home to find somebody has knocked over the garbage can and tried to eat some of the contents. Who could it be? Is your home haunted by a particularly untidy ghost? Or, and hear us out, could it be the dog who is looking incredibly ashamed of themselves and seems to be under the impression that you can't see them if they hide under the table? It can be easy to look at your dog's expression and behavior in this kind of circumstance and interpret it as them feeling guilty. But that would be a mistake. Guilt isn't an emotion that dogs can experience. Rather, the body language and behaviors that humans interpret as guilt, such as hiding, avoiding eye contact, whining or looking down, are actually signs that your dog is scared. They might not be able to understand that they've done something wrong, but they know that you're likely to be angry with them, and these behaviors are an attempt to appease you. Guilt isn't the only emotion that humans project onto their pups. We spend so much time with them that it can be easy to forget that they're an entirely different species. Scientists split emotions into 2 categories. There are the primary emotions, such as happiness, anger, sadness, fear, disgust, and wait for it, surprise, which every animal experiences to some degree. And there are the secondary emotions, such as guilt, jealousy, and anxiety, which are only experienced by humans and other primates. Because dogs don't experience the same emotions that we do, it's often hard for them to understand why we do the things we do. As much as it might feel like they chewed up your shoes or spread mud in the house because they wanted to be mean, they literally can't understand why you're so upset. Even non-dog owners know how to recognize a happy dog. It's the wagging tail. But what if we told you that this, supposedly the simplest aspect of canine body language, was a lot more complicated than you thought? Yes, dogs do wag their tails when they're happy. Specifically, a happy dog will stick their tail high in the air and flop it back and forth, possibly, if they're a big dog, knocking over furniture in the process. But a scared dog may also wag their tail out of nervousness, only in this case it's likely to be tucked between their legs rather than sticking in the air. Some studies also suggest that the direction of wagging matters more than we originally thought. Dogs are more likely to wag their tails to the right if they're feeling happy and confident, and more likely to wag their tail to the left if they're feeling anxious and uncertain. Essentially, tail wagging is to dogs what smiling is to humans. Both are assumed to be straightforward expressions of happiness. But a dog can nervously wag their tail just as a human can nervously smile. If you've ever had problems with your dog's behavior, there's one piece of advice that you've likely heard a lot. Exercise them. The idea is that if you give your pup a lot of exercise in the form of walks and playtime, then they'll work off their excess energy and be too tired to misbehave. This idea isn't totally without merit. It's true that dogs are more likely to misbehave if they're bored or suffering from an excess of energy, and it's true that exercise is one way to solve these problems. But not every problem can be solved with a good run. In some cases, extra exercise can actually make the problem worse. If your dog is acting out because they're stressed, overstimulated, or anxious, and you disrupt their comfortable routine to take them for exercise in a crowded dog park, then you're likely to just distress them more. Dogs with fluffy fur are adorable, but it can be hard not to feel sorry for them when the weather starts to warm up. If you have a cold weather dog, like a husky or a malamute, then you might even have joked about shearing them for the summer. After all, it's what farmers do with sheep, isn't it? And some dogs kinda even look like sheep. But yeah, no matter how hot they look under that thick coat, thick fur is designed to protect your dog from cold by insulating their body heat to keep it from escaping into the freezing winter air. But this insulation works both ways. Your dog's thick undercoat can also keep the warm summer air from getting to their body and causing them to overheat. A layer of fur also provides a more obvious form of protection. It keeps your dog from being sunburned. Dogs who have had their fur cut for the summer are at risk of developing skin cancer. Conclusion: don't shear your dog. There is no symbol more iconic to dog ownership than the bone. Bones are everywhere. You'll find them on dog bowls, on beds, and on blankets. You can find ones that squeak, and ones that are made for chewing, and even ones that are made out of dog biscuits. And, of course, no self-respecting cartoon dog would ever be caught without one. You might assume that this means that it's okay to feed your real-life dog bones, but this isn't the case. Dogs can eat bones, but it's a meal that could very easily end up being their last. When your dog gnaws on a bone, they're trying to crack it open to get at the marrow inside. When the bone cracks, however, sharp splinters can break off and end up inside your dog's belly, causing anything from a bad tummy ache to a perforated intestine. Vets generally don't recommend giving your dog bones at all, but if you must, then make sure that they are uncooked, as cooked bones are more prone to splinters. The second thing is, the bone should be covered in a layer of meat so as to provide a cushion for your dog's teeth, or just get them a rubber squeaky one from the store. Your dog will put up with a lot of things that you do without a bark of complaint. So how can you tell which of your actions are secretly hurting your dog? In this video, we'll pick through 8 things that your dog secretly hates every single day.